Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Sippin and Selling
with Joey Chanel. Welcome to season 3 of Sippin and Selling. I can't believe I'm saying that. And I'm so excited to welcome my first guest of season 3. It is going to be such a refreshing conversation. I'd love to welcome a very well-known entrepreneur in my home. Her name is Holly Thaggard. Welcome to the show, Holly.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and to talk all things H2O and maybe a little SPF too.
Yes, please. I'm a big fan. That's what I was saying. I brought some. We'll get into this little bottle later. But today we're talking about Water Ouai. And I'm going to cheers to you because you sent me some samples. And like I said, it's refreshing. And for those of you who know and have listened to Sippin and Selling, my favorite thing to drink non-alcoholic is water. So cheers, Holly. Welcome to the show. So yes. Well. Delicious Water Ouai. We're doing things differently in water. I know that people will probably say, why now? Why water? What are we doing here? Especially since I did a nod to your well-known product that's been around for a long time, and I will definitely highlight it. But I think we'll start with the beverage. We're talking about water. It's water in a can. And again, maybe some of you don't understand why Holly is doing this project, which I find to be very interesting. And it's very special because she's working with her son. And I think that's so wonderful, Holly. Can you please give me a little bit of a background about how you got into business with your son?
Yes, of course. And look, never would I have dreamed after 20 years of literally being obsessed with SPF that I would be starting out building this journey again in a new industry, an entirely new industry. But the story is so authentic. I love to build and create by nature. And my father's advice has always been to make the world a better place and focus on innovation and doing things that haven't been done before. And so when our son presented me with this idea a little over 2 years ago now, to change the way the world drinks water, I had to take a step back and kind of think through because it had so many parallels in what we did at Supergoop and how we built based on prevention and education and innovation. And it's such an authentic story to Will. And it's one that if I take a step back and to his 5-year-old pre-K days, there was a guest speaker at his all-boys school that came and said, if you don't take anything from this time together, don't let your boys drink from plastic water bottles. And he went on to talk about health and wellness and how it can affect their testosterone, their drive, it can heighten ADD, and all of these very big concerns that, frankly, 15 years ago, people were not talking about microplastics. But it was a decision that we could make in our family that was an easy one. I was busy crisscrossing the globe and feeling like I wasn't a great mom, but yet this was a decision to eliminate, plastic bottles. This was easy. I could do this. So nobody really asked me why until he was in high school, and we began volunteering to clean up the ballparks and the hiking trails on the weekends together as a mother-son initiative through the Young Men's Service League. And of course, everything that we picked up along the trails and at the ballparks on Sunday nights were plastic water bottles. So he began asking me questions about, Mom, why is it that when, my friends would come over with a plastic water bottle in their hand, you would throw it in the trash like it was a tube of Coppertone? And I said, well, Will, this is what I learned when you were really young. And fast forward 2 years of doing this, prior to his junior year in high school, he came to my husband and I, and he said, I want to do what you did in the world of sunscreen with Supergoop to the water industry. I feel lucky that you knew at a very young age that this was potentially harmful to my health. And I think a lot of kids aren't getting it. And he even said, by the way, Mom, on the bus on the way to the football games, even at my school, the ice chests were loaded with plastic water bottles.
Wow.
So he really just became obsessed with learning more about can technology. And what we learned there were that often even aluminum cans are lined with plastics to protect the water, the product, from touching the aluminum. And then twist top metal cans, actually, when you crack them open, they can drop microplastic dust into the water. So like I said, he became obsessed with the category, with the industry, and he's obviously grown up with quite a few entrepreneurial conversations around our dinner table.
I love that. And you said he's going off to college soon, so I'm sure there's a bunch of mixed emotions in the home. I can't imagine. But how cool that he was so, stimulated by watching what you guys built with Supergoop. And like I said, I love this product. I have 2 young boys in my home. We've been using it forever. I think it was like, I don't know. I think it was like 2009 or something, the first time I bought your product, but I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, if it wasn't out then. But I believe that's when it was. And then later on, once I had the kids, so 2013 and 16, they hated sunscreen. Nobody likes to put sunscreen on. All these little boys, I'm in Florida, little girls, it's like the white streaks, they jump in the pool, then it comes off, and they're all giving us a hard time about putting it on in the first place because it smells bad, it stings their eyes, etc. And then here comes along Supergoop, and you have this clear product that my kids, it's in my bag. I have this mini one in my bag all the time. All my friends are always obsessed. They're all like, what is that product? If they hadn't seen it, they're under a rock. But like my brother, for example, he's in his late 60s and he came down for Thanksgiving and he was like, this is amazing. Like, what is this stuff? And right away ordered it on Amazon. So, everybody's obsessed with Supergoop. I would love to go down that story path. But I like to open tabs and go back and forth because there is synergies. There is like a love language of your son watching you build this brand. And if I remember the story correctly from listening to you talk about it in the past, you didn't really have an education in anything about this. You were just so motivated about health in schools. You wanted to like be able to have sunscreen available for everybody going outside on the playground. And that was your first idea about it?
My first year out of college, I was a 3rd grade school teacher, and I watched these children play on the playground and stay in school after school for sports. And never once did I see a tube of sunscreen.
Right.
So it was baffling to me with the carcinogen in the sky above us. And on the playgrounds, definitely schools would put a fence around the playground to protect from ongoing traffic. But, never once did I see sunscreen. And so when I dug into the category in the industry, it was just incredibly sleepy. There was no innovation. And unseen sunscreen is definitely, if I had, I think we sell 2 every 12 seconds around the clock.
That's outrageous. Well, I'm probably one of the 2.
Well, it's game changing, right? It feels unexpectedly beautiful. It's invisible. In fact, our son Will, who you mentioned, yes, we're taking off to college on Friday. Very mixed emotions, particularly as deep as we've gotten into this launch for Water Ouai and his passion. But we're going to make it happen. But unseen sunscreen has gotten Will and I in more arguments because I can't, when he was much younger and he used our play formula, I could see he applied it kind of messily like boys do. And I could always see that he was wearing sunscreen, which was very comforting. And then unseen came along and he'd come down for school and I couldn't literally not see it. It's completely undetectable, invisible, weightless, lightless, touchless, it's everything. But I think that is why men have embraced it wholeheartedly because they're not used to that kind of sensation for something like sunscreen.
Absolutely. And it's so easy to wear under makeup. It's like a primer. I love it.
Yeah. So, and it's, it's interesting because Water Ouai, and I don't think, while they are totally different industries, food and beverage and beauty, and I'm learning every day that they work very differently. They share the same philosophy. It's prevention first and make a good choice, make it a daily ritual. Make it beautiful, clean, hydration. I mean, Supergoop was the first formula without oxybenzone and chemical fragrances that itch and irritate. And I mean, we think about water now, and on the go is necessary, right? It's not always easy for to stay hydrated, first of all, without taking something on the go, or having it in locations like football games and baseball games and sports parks, and having it in locations where purchasing water is typically done, and what the offering is usually a plastic water bottle. So, we were born Supergoop with a prevention first mindset. And I think that, that shaped the success of the brand. And I knew that I could take my experience being a brand founder and apply this to the same, to help tackle the same kind of wellness challenge, but in a different category in water and in microplastics. And Will would benefit, start out maybe on second or third base a little bit with the connections and relationships that I've built over the last 20 plus years. But it's been really fun and exciting, and it's also brought awareness to my husband and I that those dinner conversations on repeat his entire life, they were sinking in a little bit.
Absolutely. And that's such a joy as a parent, watching them just flourish and come up with their own ideas. So what did that look like? He comes to you and he's like, I want to change the world like you did with Supergoop. I know that you never gave me plastic water bottles, which I agree with you. They're so easy, obviously cost effective. People are buying them at the super mega stores at a deep discount. And you're right. It wasn't something everybody talked about. I feel like it's all I see on my feed now. People are bringing this topic up, and I don't know what other issues people have from microplastics, but I just remember when my kids were young, it was all about BPA free. That was the only thing I remember when my kids were young. Now they're older and I'm hearing about the microplastics in the water bottles. And I feel like a lot of people have a favorite type of water, and it's always that they're saying that it doesn't taste weird, right? Like there's some that taste weird. And if you break down the taste, it's the plastic that they're tasting, and you're ingesting it, and it's so bad for you. And it's so unfortunate that that's the way that everybody's been growing up, me included. And like you said, the coolers, the stadiums, the beach, whatever it is, that's the easy go-to. Now, you guys came up with your super can, which I think is kind of like a nod to you. And so
and the exclamation point at the end, there's that's what we do in our family.
Yeah, I love it. And I love that's like a gift too, right? Like it was like a nod to mom and dad, like a nice kudos. But the name Water Ouai, it's spelled differently than W-A-Y. Can you explain how you guys came up with that name? And then I want to ask about how Will got you involved. Like that dinner table conversation.
Yes, definitely. It was interesting because Will's older sister was going abroad to study in Provence,
Nice.
Her sophomore year in college. And she was at the table when we were sitting there having this conversation about Will and what he wanted to do. And he was talking a lot about the traditional aluminum can technology, and how they're sprayed with microplastics, and often because they're sprayed after the can is being made.
Okay.
It can be uneven, and it can even chip into the product through water, especially we live here in Texas, and especially in the hot summer Texas sun. So he started talking about, Mom, but even screw off, twist top aluminum cans drop microplastic dust. There's got to be a better way, and I'm going to figure this out. And so his sister said, well, Will, when you figure this can technology out, she said, you should create a brand and call it Water Ouai. And she said, because that's the cool way, having been studying French for a year, she said, the cool way to say yeah in French. And so when you figure it out, we can all be like, yeah. And I was like, that's pretty good. And I have always said that, where there's a will, there's a way.
Cute.
It's also a nod to his name and the commitment that I knew it would take. And look, there were probably 1,600 times in the last 2 years that I have said, Will, are you sure you want to do this? I know very well what building a brand takes. And it's a real commitment. You're about to go to college. He's like, Mom, I want to make sure that game day on the boulevard at SMU has no more plastic water bottles. And he's been obsessed all summer as we launched in June. And he's literally been the one delivering water everywhere to all of our hospitality partners, and to the Snowmass Rodeo, and to all of the places that we could really focus on making a difference and a real impact. But while he's doing this, he's also networking to find who's having all these parties on the boulevard. I've been to a few games at SMU, and I understand that every single tent down the boulevard has plastic water bottles and ice. And how are we going to change that? And I think that's one of the things where we've really, when we sat down and once our trademark was registered and we did some of the more legal things that I knew were necessary to get our IP locked up, we started talking about distribution. And this is something that Will really contributed to. He said, Mom, I don't want to be on the grocery store shelves yet. I really want to educate. I want to deliver the education just like you did with Supergoop. and bring awareness to this problem that exists that so many people, including many of my friends, didn't even know this existed. And I want to bring awareness to this. I want to think about distribution partners that are a little less traditional and places where we can get a real commitment from cleaning up their space. And so we started thinking about hospitality partners. Hotel Jerome is one of ours in Aspen.
Nice.
And literally, Will was delivering water every other day, 150 cases. Well, they put them in their valet, they put them at the pool, they put them at the check-in and in the rooms. And I mean, that's really impactful when you think about 150,000 cases. A case for Water Ouai is 24 of our super cans. And when you think about that's how many plastic bottles we replaced from just that one location all summer long. And so we started thinking about different distribution partners. My life and how many boardrooms have I been in? How many private equity VC meetings have I been in and sat at a table with 25 smart people, and yet there's plastic water bottles in the middle of the table or a can that people are cracking open. And so we really started identifying those people that we could make a very big impact with not a huge footprint right now. I mean, I think it's important for an 18-year-old especially to really learn the basics of building a brand and being involved in every aspect, from the modeling out, the financial modeling, to the distribution partners, to the deliveries, to, really just every little bit and piece that he can learn at this very early stage, I think will benefit him later in the life of the journey of the brand.
For sure. And listen, it's water. So like I said, I love it. And we've seen the innovations at the stadiums. You talked about it. They have the aluminum and they won't let us keep the tops, which is so crazy. And I understand the method around it with concerts and that sort of thing. They're afraid of people throwing it at the artists. But that's the only pushback I've ever had with any sort of product, whether it's water or an RTD, and you're trying to pitch it to someone that already has it in a twist top. They're like, well, what about the opening? Then once it's open, it's kind of annoying. But for me personally, I'd much rather have an open can than an open water bottle without a top. That's such a pain in the butt for me, where like people are used to the cans like this. This aluminum isn't anything new, but your type of aluminum is new. And like you said, the internal liner, which I've heard of because I used to sell a tequila that was the first and only tequila brand in an aluminum bottle. And they said, like in the beginning when they were getting people to spray the liners to keep the alcohol to stay stable, they were having an issue with it. It was breaking down because the alcohol, and there was certain liners that didn't work. So let's talk about you guys finding the right partner to create this super can and non-chemical liner that is safe for us to drink.
Yeah, and I think you raised another really good point in that artesian water tastes really good, and it's not the same expectation that most people have when they're taking a sip from a traditional aluminum can. But also the size of the can. And if you notice, we really chose it's very slim, luxurious, kind of smaller, 8.5 ounces. And what we loved about this is when we had these conversations with hospitality partners that we wanted to launch with, one of the biggest frustrations in hotels is how many half drinking water bottles they pick up on a daily basis.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Which is really, really wasteful too. And so while yes, our can is recyclable, the aluminum is made completely backwards than most traditional aluminum cans, in that we don't use solvents and we don't spray the microplastics in to coat the aluminum after the can's made. It's a process that was created in Japan, and it literally takes sheets of aluminum, lines it with an even PET liner, and then the can is created, which gives you it gives you lower emissions. It eliminates the need for any kind of solvent-based curing. It makes the can safer for both the consumer, but also for the environment. So it checks those boxes. And it's a level of material integrity that is just not found in this category yet.
Right. It's true. I mean, listen, I work in beverage. Like I shared, I come from the alcohol side, and the strategy with the vessel is the hardest part, you know? And like I said, usually people will start with the idea, the concept, the juice, whatever, and then they'll start with the original packaging, and it's not the one they end up going to market with. There's some adjustments some way, somehow, because either feedback or the customers are unhappy. So when it comes to cans like this, yes, you're unique in your size. It is so beautiful and so cute, and I'm so happy to walk around with it, and I matched it today. But it's aluminum, so it's going to dent and this and that, right? Like, how did you guys combat that with when you were picking your size, your manufacturer and everything, and your packaging? Because like you said, you come in 24 cans. So I personally felt like for when I opened it, there was no dents. That never happens. And if it happens, you know, like you said, maybe Will was delivering it to my house, which wasn't the case. So how did you guys pick the outside package? And for your go-to-market strategy, it sounds like you're working with hotel partners first, but I know you probably want to be in retail. So is this the only size that you're going to offer as the 24-pack?
Yeah, so let me see if I can check all of those questions off. So packaging compatibility, and this probably goes back to my Supergoop days, because sunscreens as an over-the-counter drug, I was well aware of how the importance of packaging compatibility and how the packaging works with the product. I've lived my entire career, 25 years, testing on packaging compatibility with formulas. So that was definitely one of the very first things that got my real attention around innovating in a can technology. And if Will were here with us today, he would say, and you know, little cans for tiny hands, because he really does have this passion for going back to kindergarten classrooms. And in fact, on Monday, we'll be launching at the Episcopal School of Dallas. We'll be there on site talking to every parent and teacher about the school's commitment to eliminating plastic water bottles from their campus.
Wow.
So the can size really did factor into the foundation. And, you know, I thought about that very similarly with Supergoop. We were the first playful named skincare brand in the world. Drunk Elephant, Glow Recipe, none of those popular Sephora brands existed when we launched Supergoop. And so I often heard from people like, you'll never be taken seriously with a name like Supergoop. And I trusted my gut and realized that if we were going to teach young children, because changing consumer behavior is one of the most difficult things ever to do.
Absolutely.
And if we were, it's much easier to start a 5-year-old wearing sunscreen every day than it is. I mean, think about how they buckle their seatbelt, and they would never dream of getting in a car and not putting their seatbelt on today. Wasn't always like that. So I knew that if we were going to change consumer behavior, we had to work on the parents too, but we had to be a fun and playful brand that children would find funny and could smile and, you know, literally turn that frown upside down. So the name really factored into that. And I think the same, you know, is true with when I think about, it was actually a surprise that hospitality started talking about how much they love the size of these cans, because people can pick them up, finish them, and throw them in the trash. And the housekeeping is not constantly picking. That was a surprise. This was really done because we trusted our gut that we really want to inspire young children to never touch a plastic water bottle in their life. And, you know, that's when we are going to see real change happen. So, yes, it's definitely, you know, not the most financially savvy way to like build a can,
right,
by having it made in Asia. But it's definitely staying true to the mission of the brand and the passion behind Will and why he's doing what he's doing, and how we're picking our partners, because education is another one. The San Antonio Academy, where he grew up in pre-K through 8th grade, has also made the commitment to eliminate no more plastic water bottles on the bus, is what they said to Will.
Wow.
The football and lacrosse games, we're just not going to do it anymore. And for him to be able to be out there front and center, educating around each of these schools that are launching, as we tweak and learn how to do it a little bit better and better. It's just the same exact philosophy that I built Supergoop, the brand, on. And you know, for Supergoop, it was an over-the-counter drug. So I learned that we weren't even actually able to launch in schools right away.
Okay.
The cool part about that is that over the years, our retail program and our partnership with Sephora enabled us to fund a giving program, as I was on Capitol Hill advocating for a change in laws around sunscreen. And the carving a policy out to allow it on school campuses. And so once we had changed up to 20 something states, we were of a size, we had scaled enough to where we could go back and launch a giving program and literally give Supergoop pumps to school classrooms all over America. So, that's another lesson that I'm teaching Will, is that, sometimes the obstacles and sometimes the problems are actually blessings. You just don't find out about those blessings until much later in the journey. And that's why it's a marathon. It's not a sprint, building a brand. And I know that, and I'm encouraging him, while we have a lot of opportunities for distribution, because I have a lot of relationships, and that's really where I've been coming in more to play in helping the brand. Of course, the first 2 years building the brand book, the guidelines, the social strategy, all of those things they come very naturally for me. So those were fun conversations to have alongside Will. What we're really leaning into now with my role in the brand is introductions and making those relationships, so that we can have both hospitality partners, aviation partners. You think about how many plastic water bottles are on airplanes.
Mm-hmm.
Some of our school partners, and the exciting part for me though in this journey is that 25 years ago, Supergoop, nobody was talking about SPF. It was an icky, sticky mess, and the wind was not in our sails, and as it is in this conversation today. It just happens that guest speaker at Will's school when he was in kindergarten was well ahead of his time, and introduced this little bit of a nugget of information to the mothers that I happened to latch onto. And over the course of the last 15 years, and particularly over the last, call it 18 months, this microplastic conversation is just it's an important one that people are, the plastic detox that Netflix I happened to go live the week, before we were launching. You couldn't even have made that up.
Totally. It was kismet. It's so, listen, timing's everything, like you said. And I've heard you talk about Supergoop before because, like I said, no BS, I'm a fan. And I'm a big fan of entrepreneurs, and I love family businesses. And like you, I am where I am today is because my husband supported me. And I came from a beverage industry family. I was not interested in being in the beverage industry. And my husband was like, you will never have a better boss or education than working in a family business. Just do it, and he believed in me, and he let me take a step back from retail. And he was like, just build your business. People will come. And like you said, there's certain moments that you don't realize until later on. And how beautiful that you started as a teacher, and then your son was in kindergarten and heard that little nugget of wisdom, and it touched him, and look where he is now. And he's off to college, and he can potentially change every campus and every college football game and baseball game, and the airlines and the mini bars and the hotel and yoga activations and everything, because water is essential to everybody, just like sunscreen. And maybe you educate people, but people know that about water, but they didn't know about the microplastics. And I think that's so beautiful that you got him, to be so inspired. And I hope that he knows how proud you are of him, right? Because I can feel it when I'm talking to you.
Well, we could learn so much from you. We'll have to have another sidebar conversation about the beverage industry, because I'm feeling my way around right now. But definitely, I have always said that my 2 non-negotiable beauty secrets are SPF and H2O.
I love it. It's smart. And I'm in Florida, so we're cousins of a hot market like Dallas, or Texas as a whole. And it is, it's just something that is essential. And I don't know that people realize that. And it's nice to hear that you guys are starting off with a real purpose. It's not like you were like your son said, I just want to get my own brands. You know what I mean? He was like, yeah. I have a passion because someone else made a little, change in his mentality. And that's special, because I remember doing that with my kid. It wasn't the same. It was actually a funny story. I never wanted him to have any of the dyes, because I noticed that when he was having some of the colored dyes, he was having stomach issues. So I used to just, when he was a little baby and he didn't understand, I just say like, no, you're allergic, because who knew if he was going to go to a friend's house, they'd offer him maybe blue ice cream or something gross. I didn't want to be such a crazy granola mom and be like, please don't feed my kid that, So he would say, no, I can't have Fruit Loops, I'm allergic or whatever. So now he goes to kindergarten. And they did a project where they took Skittles on a plate, like a paper plate, and they put water in the middle. I don't know if you ever did that with your kids. And then it like kind of like the colors spread out and it makes this pretty pattern. Almost like the tie-dye things we used to do with the paint, but it's just with like this candy. So the teacher, I guess, gave them to my son, and he was doing it, and then he was like, oh, it's green dye or it's blue dye, I'm allergic. And she was this whole fiasco. He had to go to the nurse, they had to call me, and I'm like, he's not really allergic. I just don't want him to eat anything with dye. But oh my gosh, it's so funny because now still to this day, he's like not reading labels, but he's aware that he shouldn't touch anything with these artificial colors and dyes. So it's a version.
You know what? That could one day inspire something, because I do think my children have had to hear more about SPF than any two children should ever have to over the course of their 18, 21-year life. I mean, it's just not fair. I apologize for that a lot, but I will say you're going to be so pleasantly surprised when your children are a little bit older and you are able to finally realize that a lot of those conversations sunk in, and that it changes how they're thinking about brands, about consumer products, about what products they bring into their home, their dorm, and it's fascinating, and it's very rewarding now at this stage in my life to realize there was a lot of purpose beyond just hearing myself talk my whole life.
I love that. That's hilarious. Okay, so let's go down the Supergoop of it all, because like I said, I keep saying I love it so much, and I know that's your original entrepreneurial story. So you explained why you were looking forward to, but was there anything else? Did you ever have any sort of, skin cancer touch your life or anything, or this was all just from watching being a teacher?
Yeah, so it was actually 10 years after my short 1 year in teaching third grade that my friend was diagnosed with skin cancer. And my college roommate was going through a residency in dermatology. And she said, Holly, it's not about beaches and bikinis. And it's about that every single day, little bit of exposure that's cumulative. For your friend, it happened at age 29. For most people, it doesn't compound until they're much older. But, despite what the world looks like, the UVA rays are present on cloudy, rainy days, 365 days a year. They're cancer causing. The UVB rays change the color of your skin. I mean, my parents are entrepreneurs. They always taught us to, innovate, don't do things that have been done before. I love to build and create. So I just started looking at the sunscreen industry, and it was so incredibly sleepy in 2005. There was no innovation. I knew from my time teaching, we were not teaching this healthy habit like we were washing your hands and brushing your teeth. I knew that what was on the market was owned by mass, and primarily, how the only innovation in a sunscreen product in 2005 was how high that SPF number could go from a 5 to 100.
Okay.
And so nobody was thinking about it. And yet the reputation behind sunscreen also was negative. It was an icky, sticky mess. I started, looking at the shelves, reading the ingredient labels. I found that oxybenzone, which is the number one most irritating raw ingredient, was in every single formula in the market. Also, they were loaded with parabens and things like propylene glycol. And so it's no wonder to me when I looked at the category why sunscreen had a bad reputation, because it was full of, chemical fragrances to mask the smell. And so it's just like I began to literally dream about SPF and finding ways to get it into every single person's every single day routine. I became obsessed with. So that meant beautiful, luxurious formulas that were clean, that felt great, that were a surprise. As you mentioned, your husband was surprised to find unseen sunscreen be delivered in a way that was so, beautiful on the skin.
Mm-hmm. And also in the package. The package is beautiful and fun too.
Packaging is everything. The logo is literally my signature. I love handwriting. And I just, got to work on all the little things. As you know, an entrepreneur wears all the hats, which is what Will and I are doing today with Water Ouai. we're doing a little bit of everything. We're slowly bringing on some partners. Fortunately, I have some good people from Supergoop that have had earlier left the brand after the Blackstone acquisition, and been able to kind of jump in and help in operations. Some of the things that, I don't love to do. I'd much rather be building the relationships and having the conversations around where Water Ouai can show up,
Right.
and how we're going to educate in a clever way that's playful. And again, these are all the same words that I lived by in Supergoop: playful, grit,
Super.
super exclamation points, delivering. But really, very rarely did Supergoop ever even say the word cancer. We did not believe we were going to change consumer behavior and stop a cancer epidemic, which is 1 in 5 people will be diagnosed. That's 16 times bigger than breast cancer.
Yeah.
Never did we feel like we were going to scare people in to wearing sunscreen. And so we delivered everything with a smile, in a playful, spirited, blue sky kind of way. And I think that's the same with Water Ouai. You have to be really careful when you're talking to children and you're building a family-centric brand. And so I think, being aspirational and inspirational, and doing it in a fun, playful way with a beautiful feeling product in your hand, and that's where you're going to start to make the traction. So
absolutely.
Again, so many parallels.
So many parallels. It makes so much sense. It's just a line extension that matches, in my opinion. And if I remember correctly, your first break you got was going to a trade show. So is that something you plan on doing with your son with Water Ouai, or what's the route to market strategy after these hotels and local colleges and schools in Texas?
I did start out selling through, because the school project was a failure, and it was over-the-counter drug. Couldn't send your child to school with an Advil bottle in their backpack. It was
right.
similar.
It's so silly.
Although it was
so
sunscreen.
Silly. Yeah.
Yes. So I did start out in the trade show industry, and little boutique mom and pops were my first accounts, along with some national accounts like Barney's New York, and some of those places where I called them mindful explorers, people that were willing to buy something a little different. Again, the name was Supergoop, and it was serious, efficacious, highly skincare, so I had to find the people that could think a little bit outside the box. But with Water Ouai, I relationships. In fact, we sat up with a spreadsheet last night, almost half the night, just kind of going through all of the leads from the summer that we've had and the introductions that we've had, and really looking at I don't see really going down the path yet, because we're not that focused on grocery. And yes, retail will at some point, when it's a boutique retailer, I wanted to be in Barney's because I wanted to have an opportunity nationwide to
right.
sell to those people that found our brand when they were at the Beverly Hills Hotel or wherever they were lying on the beach.
Right.
And so, I think retail in a very curated way, because then you can get the support from the retailer to really help navigate the education to the consumer and understand that it's more than just putting a bottled water on the shelf. It's really about, hey, did you know? And here's how we can give you a solution or a more luxurious offering for water on the go. So, I don't see any trade shows, but I do see some events, and we're being presented a lot with different sort of events we can. And again, that was similar with Supergoop too, because every pop-up yoga or outdoor anything, Soul Cycle was hot back when we were very young, and we had Soul Cycle parties in Union Square, and on every bike was a tube of Supergoop. So, there's definitely opportunities for spreading the brand awareness that I think we have not begun to think about the typical, more traditional trade shows at this point and stage. I think it's a journey. You got to break it down, right? You've got to break down who your audience is, who you're talking to first, and where you're going to focus your energy, because you can't do everything at one time.
No. And like I said, I love to open a lot of tabs. So I feel like my mind is how most women are, right? We can multitask and we can do a lot of things at once. And at the end of the day, you're dealing with your son. He's a different animal. And I'm sure he's so gung-ho on getting this everywhere. But you've done this before, and you're telling him the right advice that he needs to do: slow is fast enough approach. And the right partners because you guys can't do everything yourselves. And water, unlike alcohol, water distribution is completely different. You guys can self-distribute. You don't need licensing. So there's a lot of different creative ways to get to your product on shelves or in restaurants and that sort of thing. And at the end of the day, it is your purpose, your messaging, and I want to make sure everybody listening is following you guys. So you guys are on Instagram right now. It's at Water Ouai on Instagram. Where can they purchase you? Can they purchase online right now?
We'll ship it right to your doorstep.
Amazing. And then,
you know what? One of my favorite things to do all summer long. I mean, we've only been live for now, call it, June, July, and part of August. But we have these adorable little merch totes that are also for sale on our website, and a super case of super cans exactly fit in the measurement of this tote, which makes it really nice as a hostess gift, and to be able to take it to your parties or to take it to the football parties and carry it in a very convenient way, because water's not light, it's heavy.
It's definitely heavy. And that's why I was asking about the cases, if you guys had plans to make them smaller or not. Not because I need them. I drink a lot of water. I'm going to go through all of this product really quickly. But I was just curious for like, if and when you do want to go to retail, because that's where my brain is set, a Whole Foods, a Fresh Market, that makes sense.
All different types of packaging. I mean, I love innovation. I'm already dreaming about the next, I mean, this is what this is very natural for me to be thinking about where do we go from here. But I also think it's really important for a brand to not get in over their skis and really, take their time in delivering out the innovation. We have very little awareness even still. And so to that, thank you so much for helping us get the word out and spread awareness. But, over time, we definitely have a product pipeline of innovation that I can see fits very naturally into the world of Water Ouai.
Absolutely. So if your dream retailer in a year calls you, where do you think it is? What first big box store do you think you belong on the shelf at?
Oh, we're not even talking about that right now.
No? Okay.
We're really not. And I think that, it will be somebody that will call us that
similar to Sephora.
Sees the phone number on the packaging and realizes it's my son's phone number.
Oh, it is? That's hilarious. That's so funny. A true entrepreneur. He's like, just call me. I'll figure it out for you. I'll hand deliver.
And it may be a retail partner that doesn't even exist today. I mean, the world of retail changes so quickly.
That's true.
And so really thinking about who is the best complement to our guest experience when they see us at an auberge hotel resort, or a Post Oak hotel in Houston, or some of our partners early, or flying on a plane, or even just at Monday we're going to be at the Episcopal School of Dallas talking to everyone in that audience, and every parent there has been successful and done other cool things. And those are the connections that we're really focused on making for today.
I love that. Do you know if Will's at that school, when they did the conversation, if that company that came in and did the presentation that stuck with him is still in business?
It is. It's Michael Gurian. He is a child psychologist, therapist, kind of researcher of all things boy specific and girl specific. And he travels around to schools, and I think even has accredited schools across the country. I made a connection with him several months ago. I actually owe him an email back because we have had the chance to catch up and share what an influence that 1 hour that he spent in our school was for our family, and now how we hope to inspire in other families.
Yeah, I wanted to know, because what a full story, like a full circle moment for him. He must be so touched.
The book is called The Minds of Boys.
I love that.
It's promoting his book, and it just talked about how boys learn very differently than girls, and all of the things that as mothers we should be concerned about in raising a family of boys, and how we can make better choices. And now we say way better.
I love that. That's amazing. So as a serial entrepreneur, please give me some words of wisdom for everybody out there listening who maybe has just started a business, who feels they're failing at their business, and they just like need some words of wisdom, something that you feel that really helped you stay motivated?
This is going to sound a little cliche, and it's the reason I asked Will 1,600 times, are you sure you want to do this? Because I needed to make sure that he was literally dreaming about this. And I knew when I started dreaming about water, and I say that with a smile, but it's true. I wake up every morning with a new idea. And so that's how I know that this is going to work, because we will not stop.
Right.
And I think can't stop, won't stop is like half of the battle. And everyone at Supergoop that knows me knows that was my mantra around the office in Singapore, Paris, New York, and San Antonio was can't stop, won't stop. And when you know you're making the world a better place, when you're delivering innovation to the consumer, and you're doing it in a way that you're obsessed with, and that if you're not truly obsessed, it won't last. And so I think sometimes you have to shift your journey to something else that is something maybe you can become obsessed with. So I really do. I know, like I said, it sounds a little cliche to say, make sure that you're so passionate, but also keep your eyes open on the journey, because I could have been discouraged many times in my Supergoop journey. One where I spent 2 years writing a preschool through 5th grade curriculum on sun safety to have never launched it in schools, because I later learned, that could have been a big downer for me. But I shifted, pivoted, turned a different way, learned the business of retail, and then realized that to change in this world only comes from somebody that's passionate. So I could march up to Washington, D.C. and bring awareness to this ridiculous law that existed and start changing school policies in this country. And then when you do that alongside building the business to the scale that we did, I was like, you know what? We're also solving the problem that schools don't have money for often pencils.
Right.
I'm going to buy sunscreen.
Right.
And so I was able to fund the entire giving program, which now puts thousands of pumps of Supergoop in school classrooms from the East to the West Coast. And so, always be aware that your journey, and I almost got excited whenever there was a big obstacle, because I knew that I was onto something that somebody else hadn't solved.
Okay. I like that. It's inspirational. Love it. Holly, I feel like we could have multiple episodes talking about so many things because your life is so fascinating. And yes, like you said, you could have been discouraged, and a lot of people are. I talk to a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs, and they're mostly in beverage, but I've talked to a few others that, they thought of an idea and they were turned down even by an internal support system, right? Oh, nobody needs another water. Oh, nobody needs another sunscreen. And you have to just believe in yourself is something I always tell everybody. And I think that's cliche too, but it's true, right? You have to be secure in what you believe in. You have to be secure in your messaging, and you have to be secure in what you bring to the table. And I think that's probably what Will saw in you and your husband, right? Like he was just like inspired. Yes, you were successful, but you also were passionate. That's infectious. And you can't teach that. Do you know what I mean? And that can't be faked. It has to be authentic. And at the end of the day, I think that's what makes a true successful entrepreneur, is that you're being transparent, you're being honest, and you make mistakes and you share the mistakes, because that's what we're all trying to do, right? Like, it's nice to make the world a better place. Everybody will say it. Not everybody's going to do it. So I appreciate you sharing your story, multiple stories with me and my audience. And I am very inspired to not only not have plastic water bottles in my house at the fields, here in Podcast Junkie Studio. I just am so happy to share my viewers and listeners with you guys, because it's something that's going to change this industry. And I believe that. And I'm very proud that you were on the podcast, because you're a badass and I appreciate you coming on here.
Thank you so much for having me and bringing awareness to this very important topic, and support of what we're building and most passionate about today. And I'd love to do it again. We can do a follow-up, and I'll keep everybody posted how things are going and what kind of mountains we're able to climb over to stay true to our mission and vision, and bring more and more awareness to this.
I love that. I'm with you. I'm going to be following along. Again, everybody make sure that you're following Water Ouai. Try it, order it. There we go. Maybe we'll get you a nice little Sippin and Selling coupon code. We'll talk to Holly about that offline. Pass it by Will. And Holly, I always like to ask the audience if there's anything else that I missed that I didn't bring up that potentially is something important you wanted to share with the audience.
Oh gosh, let's see. I think we've covered a lot today, and I'm interested in the audience because I know everyone's very specific to beauty. I mean, to the food and beverage that are listening in, and if anybody has any advice for me, I think I need to flip that question around and say, please, you know, I'm easy to find, Holly at waterouai.com, and I would love to, I'd love to know what I'm not thinking about, and learn from some of the wisdom, because I think asking questions and learning from people that are much deeper in the industry. And I fortunately with Supergoop I didn't come from the beauty industry either. And I think in a way you can kind of, it's nice because you'll do things differently than traditional beauty industry companies rock and roll. But I think also, you know, with having knowledge of an industry and how things work. Distributors, I'm trying to figure that whole thing out. And how does this work? Because in beauty, we don't do that.
I know.
The thing.
And it's different by every state. Every state has their own rules. Texas is one of them. Texas with liquor, forget about it. It's backwards. Like I can't sell 2 specs directly in theory from there to a restaurant. They have to pick it up from the Class B license with a sticker on it to bring it into Post Oak Hotel. That doesn't happen here in Florida. You order through your distributor, it gets delivered. So yeah, there's so many different rules and legalities, but thankfully you don't have alcohol in your cans, so you have a lot less. But yeah, there's so many crazy things. And
well, at school we're learning schools have an entirely different network of distribution partners for influencing what food choices and what beverage choices are brought onto school campuses. And but also that keeps it really interesting, right? I mean, if you're
learning, knowledge is power.
It's kind of exciting to me to think that the industry is very different than beauty, because, you know, frankly, I spent 22 years in the beauty industry. And I do think there's some overlap, though, in the beauty and wellness categories, that beauty is getting a little bit leaning more into the wellness and wellness. You know, I think it's kind of interesting to see that there could be some crossover as retail, you know, changes too.
It's true. I had a beer brand on last season that, you know, they started a beer in a can, in a bottle, and it was organic, certified organic, which sounds silly, right? But like they hadn't found one. They hadn't found any beers that like literally went through the process to get certified. And they came from the beauty world. And it was so interesting to hear their stories and their methodologies and why they thought, let's do this. And they were doing really well because of just something that sounds so silly and easy and obvious that Whole Foods came knocking before they even had a final product. They were just teasing it. So that never happens because I've been doing this 20 years and Whole Foods doesn't come knocking unless you send samples and you filled out the forms. So that was pretty interesting to hear. So you're onto something. You definitely are a cousin in the way your brain works. And it's always refreshing to have someone come in with new way of looking at something and a fresh set of eyes. And it can change not only just the way we drink water, it could also change the way we distribute it. So you never know.
That's right.
Well, Holly, thank you so much. You were a pleasure. Say hi to Will. Good luck moving him into college.
Mixed feelings about that.
I know. Yeah. I can't imagine. I really can't. It goes by too fast. And I hope that your daughter some way, somehow got some credit for the way part here.
You know, she's created the logo. She's an artist.
Oh,
yes. So it's truly been an entire family involved. I mean, Emery has spent her career at Meadows at SMU, her second year abroad in France, I mentioned, and then she just returned from Italy. She is a complete artist through and through, and graphic design and all of that comes with that has been really fun to see her work alongside Will in creating the video, even on our waterouai.com homepage. She animated, Will scripted it, and she did a live animation of the process of how traditional cans are made versus how the super can is made.
That's amazing. I've seen the video. I didn't know she did that. That's so cool.
Yes, so they're still very close, and we'll actually both be at SMU overlapping for a year. So they'll get to continue working together. Will, as most recently, become obsessed with writing a children's book about the dangers of microplastics, again, delivering it in a fun, playful way. And he's engaged Emery to illustrate the book. So again, we're going to have to learn, how does publishing work?
That's amazing, though. What a gift. What a gift to be in the family business. Like I said, I know it. I do work with my father, but siblings is a whole other level. You must be so proud, you and your husband. That's so cool. And I look forward to seeing the journey and the book. I'll have to, you guys going to post it on that social, or do you have a title yet? Or
we are just beginning.
Okay. Well, you're going to have to keep me in the loop. I'll email you.
Okay. Sounds great. Nice talking with you.
Nice talking with you, Hallie. Thank you so much for sharing your story about Water Ouai and also Supergoop. Everybody, make sure you're following them on Instagram. And thank you for your time again, Holly. I'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Sipping and Selling
With Joey Chanel.